Alright, so I'm going to talk about a few movies that I've seen recently. Um, just to kind of catch up on this year's releases. I've been kind of behind ever since the summer, so I hope I can make up for some of that right now. The first movie I saw is Rush, the new Ron Howard movie, Rush, about the Formula One race car drivers, James Hunt and Niki Lauda. It's kind of a biopic, but not really. I mean, it's not really detailing the lives of these people so much as a specific section of their lives during this little rivalry that they had as racers. So let me start off by saying that I really loved Rush. I mean, this is just a great movie. That I don't even want to say it's a great racing movie or a great Ron Howard movie. It's just a really great movie. And I've been waiting for another great Ron Howard movie. I mean, when you go through his filmography, his directorial filmography, I mean there are definitely hits and misses. I mean, I'm just gonna go through a few of them right now. Like Apollo 13 was very good. Um, like Tom Hanks and I believe Bill Paxton was there also. I can't remember. It's been years since I've seen that one, but I remember that one being really good. Um, uh, what was that called? What was that? A Beautiful Mind. Beautiful Mind. That was an interesting movie. And another Russell Crowe movie that he directed is Cinderella Man, which was also very good. Although the villain was a little too cartoonish at times, but whatever. I mean, it was still an interesting story about a boxer during the Depression. So yeah, people didn't really respond well to The Missing, that western that he did with Tommy Lee Jones, which was basically a remake of The Searchers. Um, but I thought it was fine. Again, the villain was too cartoonish, and a lot of it was too over the top. Um, like the Indian Magic, I thought they could have held back on, but I still thought it was I thought it was okay. Um, but I think in terms of in terms of critics' opinions, the last really good Ron Howard movie was Frost Nixon, which was '08. I think it was. So it was 5 years. It's a long time for a filmmaker. I mean, yeah, he made Angels and Demons, but very that was not very acclaimed by critics. I don't know about audiences, but critics, I think it has like a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Hey, Fiona. Sorry, my dog wants attention. Anyway, um, but yeah, Rush is a great movie, and without thinking too hard, it's probably one of the best movies I've seen all year. But that's not really saying a lot since this year hasn't really been a very good year for movies. Um, Overall, I'm saying, I mean, there have been really good movies this year, but it just seems like there are less than there were last year. Um, but I digress. Um, Rush stars Chris Hemsworth as James Hunt, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Daniel Bruhl as Niki Lauda, and it also co-stars Olivia Wilde as Hunt's ex-wife Susie, and Marjorie Terrell from Game of Thrones shows up. The Natalie Dormer chick, I think she is the chick from the Tudors and Game of Thrones. She plays this nurse that Hunt hooks up with earlier in the movie, and then he drops because that's James Hunt, or at least how he's portrayed in this movie. But you might be getting the wrong impression in that I might sound like I'm making him out to be this James Bondy type womanizer, but I'm not. I mean, these are not overly fictionalized accounts. These are not overly exaggerated characters. I mean, these characters feel real. They feel human. They feel completely fallible. I mean, and props to the two lead actors, to Hemsworth and Brule, because they knocked this one out of the park. I mean, this movie hinges on those two performances, and they completely nail it. They are so good in this movie, and the genuinely interesting dynamic that they have when they're kind of playing off of each other, because they don't like each other in the movie. I mean, it goes from simple like I don't like that guy. He's a little rat, or he's a honestly the word that is used a lot by both of them in the movie is the word asshole. um, but as the movie goes on, you see their relationship develop into some kind of grudging respect for each other. I mean, they both see the flaws in the. Each one of them sees the flaws in the other, and again, that makes for a very interesting character dynamic. I mean, and they thankfully don't go for the typical Hollywood cliche of enemies turned bromance. I mean, they still harbor some degree of animosity toward each other by the end, but again, it's just this kind of grudging respect. They acknowledge the skills of each other, and they kind of part ways, saying that you are still not my favorite person in the world, but you are the reason that I have become so good. You have forced me to push myself to the limits of my capability, of my human capability. So that was very interesting. As for the other performances in the movie, they're all very solid. I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that I don't know the names of the actors that played Hunt's racing team, but his racing team actually had a lot more personality than I would have expected. Um, Natalie Dormer doesn't have much to do. I mean, she's just kind of there. She's not really in it for long enough to really leave a lasting impression. She's only in for like 10-15 minutes, but she's fine while she's there. Olivia Wilde is also not in the movie quite as much as you would expect, especially given her lead roles in recent years. I mean, she's only in the movie for maybe half an hour, and then she kind of vanishes until the end. Um, but but yeah, she's very good. I mean, she puts on this fairly convincing British accent. It kind of slips at times, but for the most part, she does very well. And just because her accent slips does not mean her performance is bad. This is still a very dedicated performance, and she gives. I mean, she lends it much more. She lends it more gravitas and more depth. She lends more gravitas and more depth to the character than you would expect. I mean, this is the type of character that you would expect just to be this hysterical female figure in the sports star's life. That's basically Adrian from Rocky. I mean, this kind of Adrian cliche of of the uh, of the nagging female figure who's like, you shouldn't race, but I want to. But no, they don't do that. I mean, honestly, her her eventually divorcing James Hunt has very little to do, at least in the movie, it has very little to do with his racing. I mean, it has more to do with the fact that he just can't get his life together. He just does not know when to stop. He just wants to be number one. He wants to win the championship. I mean, he eventually becomes very distant, and you really can't fault her for divorcing him. I'm not trying to. I hope I'm not alienating any people by saying that, but yeah. What are some other things I wanted to talk about? Again, the two main performances are the best in the movie. I don't like to throw up the phrase "they are worthy of Oscars," but they are definitely worthy of some type of recognition because they completely knocked this one out of the park. I mean, Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl are just mesmerizing in this movie, and what they do with these characters, what they do with these real people, they humanize these real people they humanize these legends without sacrificing what made them legends in the first place, without making them boring. Kind of like what they did with Johnny Cash and June Carter in Walk the Line. They and kind of like what I hear they failed to do in the Naomi Watts Diana. I mean, that's one of the criticisms I've read about the Naomi Watts Diana is that they humanize her so much that they make her boring. So, um, but yeah, these characters are by no means boring. They are interesting. They are completely fallible. They are extremely susceptible to human error. They make mistakes. They learn from their mistakes, and you really want to see each of them come out on top. I mean, this movie, in terms of the structure, it's kind of similar to the 2011 film Warrior, which still, if it's not my favorite sports movie, it's one of my favorite sports movies. But that movie basically took two brothers and played by Joel Edgerton and Tom Hardy, and the movie basically alternated between telling their story of how they got to the MMA championship. So by the end, you were kind of like, oh, only one of them can win. So there's just that extra little bit of drama there. This movie does kind of the same thing, where, I mean, yeah, the main characters in this are not brothers by any means, but you see each of them go through these character arcs. They could honestly be movies in themselves. I mean, you see Daniel Bruhl's character go from this kind of rich kid, this rich corporate inheritance kid. He takes out a loan. He actually forms his own racing team by his own doing. I mean, he doesn't have any help from his parents. Just by his skill alone, he's able to form a racing team. He's actually able to get a very good car. I think I forget who sponsors him eventually. I think it's Ferrari. I think it is. In the beginning, he had Marlboro on his car, so he was forced to basically take any help he could get, with the exception of his family name. I mean, eventually he does. You do kind of see a softer side to his cynicism and narcissism. I mean, he actually finds a wife. And honestly, he's the more level-headed of the two. By the end, before the end, actually, you get the sense that this guy is very driven to win, but at the same time, he knows when to stop. He wants to live. He is not willing to die for the sport. And that's the difference between him and James Hunt, which makes the conversation between them so interesting, is that James Hunt is willing to die for what he wants. So, and again, you see James Hunt go from this big superstar, this rich superstar, to completely running out of sponsors, completely running out of money, his wife walking out on him, and then eventually making a comeback and seeing them both race. And with that said, the racing scenes are filmed excellently. I mean, they are filmed so well. They are so well shot. And each of them goes on for just long enough. I mean, it's not like the pod race scene in The Phantom Menace where it goes on for way too long. No, here, each racing scene goes on for just long enough. And I think the trap that this movie could have easily fallen into is, it's a movie about racers, so let's have a race every 5 minutes. No, the races are stretched far enough apart, and again, go on for just long enough so that whenever one pops up, A, they do not get old, and B, you're not like, oh god, another one. And again, a lot of that has to do with how well shot the races are. I mean, some of the angles that they get, they will focus on a blade of grass on the side of the track. The blade of grass is in focus, the track is somewhat out of focus, and the cars will come zooming by, and the grass will will shake. I mean, me describing it, it doesn't really sound that interesting, but for someone who, and I did take a photography class in high school, so again, I'm by no means a professional cinematographer, but just taking the very basic photography class, I like to think I know what an interesting shot is from a non-interesting shot. Like some of the shots in the Avengers had no point or purpose. I mean, again, Avengers is not a bad movie, but some of the shots in there really did go on for too long. They really did have no purpose. Like when they're all arguing, the camera. I mean, the Avengers were here, the camera is here, and the camera goes all the way around until it's completely upside down. Why did the cinematographer do that? I don't know, but that's the thing. That's the thing with this movie, is that every single shot in the race feels like it has a point, it has a purpose, and a lot of it benefits from Ron Howard's direction. I mean, again, he knows how to direct his actors. He knows how to create an interesting atmosphere. He knows how to really film the real world to achieve. I mean, he knows how to film something you wouldn't ordinarily associate with drama and make it dramatic. I mean that's something I really like about the guy. And again, I think one of the reasons he works so well with his actors is because he was an actor. I mean he has had acting experiences in his life. I mean to a lesser extent, I think the same principle kind of applies to Jon Favreau. I mean Jon Favreau has, I think directors turned actor or actors turned directors have that certain advantage where they have first-hand experience. They know what actors are going through. I mean Jon Favreau probably wasn't the best example, but Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck has had plenty of acting experience in the past, and I think that's one of the many factors that have fueled his success as a director in Gone Baby Gone, The Town, and Argo. So what else do I like? Oh, whoever did the makeup and prosthetics in this movie, honestly, if they do not get some kind of award or recognition, then there is just no justice in Hollywood, because the makeup in this was just fantastic. I mean the makeup, costume design. On a little side note here, you had no problem believing that this was a period piece. This was set in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. This did not feel like Peter Jackson's King Kong, where it was a bunch of modern people pretending it was the 20s. No, you honestly feel like this takes place in the 70s. But the thing with the makeup in this, Chris Hemsworth already looks kind of like James Hunt, but just doing subtle stuff with his hair, subtle stuff with his face, and again his acting. They make him really resemble James Hunt, so that when it shows the actual James Hunt and Niki Lauda, they do the same thing with Daniel Bruhl as Niki Lauda. He actually looks like Niki Lauda. They make these guys. They don't do that creepy. They don't try to make them look exactly like the actor. They don't do that thing they did in Looper where they put this really awkward-looking Bruce Willis face on Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's just real subtle. It's real subtle tricks with the makeup and the hair that they make them look like these actual people, so that when the movie shows clips of the actual James Hunt and Niki Lauda at the end of the movie, you definitely buy why these guys played them. They look very much like these people. And when Niki Lauda, spoiler alert, when Niki Lauda gets burned, when he is in that accident, and basically the entirety of his face is burned. That looked incredible. That looked real. That looked amazing. I mean, that is honestly one of the best effects I've ever seen for someone getting burned in a movie. I mean, a lot of the times when someone gets burned in a movie, it's it's kind of what what kind of bugs me is that it's kind of over the top. I mean, yeah, this I'm I do not consider myself an expert on human injury or what fire has or what effect fire has on the human body, but when I see something like Revenge of the Sith and Darth Vader all charred and blackened, I mean, I'm thinking, okay, that looks kind of stylized. I mean, it kind of looks like a stylized burn. Now this burn looks real. These burns look incredible. I mean, when he started taking the bandage off, and he's going like, "Ah, ah, ah." I mean, I actually did kind of wince in the theater when I saw it. I'm like, oh God. I mean, it is that good. I mean, wow. But yeah, Rush is a very good movie. I mean, Rush. In fact, it's not even a very good movie. It's a great movie. It's a great biopic. Um, it's a great dual story between two very interesting lead characters. It's a great sports movie. Um, it it benefits it benefits significantly from powerful performances, well shot racing scenes that again go on for just long enough. It benefits from fantastic makeup design and sure-handed direction from Ron Howard that honestly makes it one of the best movies I've seen all year. I mean, I'm sorry I can't really give as in-depth of a review as I normally would if I'm uh, if I'm talking about it at greater length, but they say it's easier to talk about a bad movie than a good movie. This is a very good movie. This is I love this movie. Go see it. I know I'm late to the game on this, but I'm telling you, go see Rush because it deserves your money. I mean, yeah.